All right, you guys, welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. I'm Rick.
And I'm Kristin.
And we are here with one of our new friends from Unfiltered Rise Podcast, Heidi Luv. Hi, Heidi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm Heidi Luv from the Unfiltered Rise. Happy to be here and nice to meet you guys.
It's so nice to meet you. You know, we heard you on a couple of different podcasts, and I actually have a family member that mentioned you as well and said that you're going around and just mentioning to people what Mormonism is from an insider's perspective. And that's what you have. But before we get into this episode, what I wanted to do is talk about the broader scope of this series that we're about to do, which is on the world religions and the cults. And so we're not going to dabble in all of them, obviously, that we'd be doing this series forever. But the problem is, you don't know what to believe until you know what is all out there. How do you attach yourself to one thing? And a lot of Christians or a lot of people say, that, when I've just grown up in this, so this is what I know, and in my opinion, that's not really good enough. You have to go outside the box. You have to get outside the family and really think for yourself. That's what it is to grow up and become an adult, right? But when we do that, then we get really confused because we have our own way of life. We have our own way of doing things and we know our family, and then the world becomes really confusing. And so what we want to do with this series is try to get rid of some of that confusion and really help people to dial in what it is they believe. Even if you are a Christian or a Buddhist or a Muslim or whatever you are, we respect all of that. Even though we do say that we're Christians and that's what we stand on. That doesn't mean that we don't want to come into this series and say we're going to bash all of you other people out there that believe all those things. That's definitely not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is, however, bring a light of truth onto what all of these things really are and how they really perform in the world. And so as we do these deep dives, you guys will learn hopefully a lot more about these things and be able to make better, well-informed decisions with your life. So with that, we're going to get into this particular episode, which is with Heidi. Thanks for hanging with us, Heidi, as I introduced that series. But we just wanted to get into Mormonism, and you have a very insider perspective that we're super interested in. And so we wanted to just let you have the floor. You have your own podcast, so you've done this before. We're just going to let you do your thing.
Awesome. Well, I'm so happy to be here again, like I said, and I like to spread my word out there. A lot of people also get kind of frustrated with me because the things I touch on are sacred to them. Mm-hmm. I want people to know for 34 years, this was extremely sacred to me. I was a Mormon and I grew up in the Mormon church and I was born into this church, and my DNA says I'm a Mormon settler and I can't get away from it, right? I live in Utah. Yeah. But the one thing I do want to mention is the reason why I go into certain things that people might get upset with, and even the big Mormon podcasts don't do, because they say, oh, well, it's sacred, like I said. Well, the problem with that is secrets keep people sick. Mm-hmm. And this was a secret that I kept. And when I got out and I found out the reality of this secret, it damaged me, right? And so that's why I share, not because I'm trying to hurt anybody else. And my family, a lot are still Mormon. My husband's family is still Mormon. We love people. The people isn't the problem, right? It's the religion.
And you can have these conversations without degrading or tearing people down, as long as you're talking about systems. And I like talking to people that have first person type of experience, because now we're not just speculating or talking about people in general. We're talking about systems. And so we'll let you talk about those systems.
So like I said, I just want to briefly touch on that because a lot of people get really mad when they see that I'm going to expose their temple garments. I'm going to expose their temple wear. I'm going to expose secret ceremonial things. And the problem with it is, like I said, if the Mormons came out tomorrow and said, hey, we're not Christian, we believe in this, and we're Masonic, and we believe blah, 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 I would probably shut up. Because I was lied to. You can't lie to people. Like, if you want to be a Mason, okay, you go and pledge to a Masonic temple and you know what you're doing. You know, you may not know every level, but you have a general understanding that this is a Mason. You're going to be a Mason now, right?
Sure.
Or a Scientologist, or and that's okay. If whatever people want to do, even if you want to be, I don't care, an occultist. Like, I really don't care what people want to choose. I hope that they'll choose the light in Christ, but we can't force it, right? So my thing is like, this whole situation is they lied to me. So nothing better than a woman scorned. So with that,
this is what you get, right? This is
what you get when you are Mormon and you scorn a woman, right? So I'm going to bump into something that a lot of people don't really think of when they think of Mormonism. And most people do not share my view on this. And I bring up Abraxas because he's going to be divinely important along with the occult and John Dee. I do not believe, like most people do, about Joseph Smith, that he was high on mushrooms or any wild thing like that. I actually believe a whole nother thing. So quickly, I just want to touch on Abraxas. And have you guys heard of him before, the chicken snake god?
I've heard a little bit. I'll be honest, I haven't done a deep dive. But I've definitely heard the name.
So Abraxas is a really Gnostic god. He is a solar god, as represented with the shield and the whip. He is considered, he also a lot of times is shown on a chariot, and that's really indicative of a solar god. He is mentioned in the Gospel of the Egyptians, and also by Saint Jerome, Uranus, Basilides mentions him a lot. And his name is 365 in gematria, which means everything and a totality, right? And so all of this is important in a minute. Just kind of put it in your back pocket because this is going to become extremely important to me. So it's not something that was just kind of created. He is actually like a god, and we'll just kind of touch on that really quick. So that's him. And this is why he's important. So this is an excerpt from a book that I highly recommend. And Lucy Mack Smith was Joseph Smith's mother. And in early Mormonism and the magical world view, can you guys still see me? Because I can't see you. But if you can see me, okay. So this is D. Michael Quinn's book, and it's a really good book. It's about basically the occultist part of Mormonism. He actually was a real Mormon still when he wrote it, and he only got excommunicated because he was gay, not because of what he said.
Okay.
So, he became a not Mormon because of this. But also, this book is like so important. So it goes into all of the folk magic that we're going to get into and some excerpts. And I bring a lot of receipts because the stuff I talk about is really weird. And so this is why I'm giving you like a background of where to find some things. So Lucy Mack Smith wrote her own biography, as well as in this early Mormonism book. It's in here. And this little excerpt says, "Let not my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season, that we stopped our labor and went about trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles to soothsaying or the neglect of all kinds of business." Okay. That's in itself right there. A brack, a house of a brack, Abraxas, abracadabra. It all goes together. I don't care if you want to worship that or whatever. You're a Gnostic. You're already well informed about Abraxas. It's a very Gnostic god. But many people call it the god of all gods, and it becomes extremely important when we get into channeling here in a bit. So this is a rendition of what Joseph Smith's dad and Joseph Smith's himself, Joseph Smith Jr. and Sr. were doing with a neighbor. They were known as a treasure hunting family. They were known as healers. The mother was actually the first people to be born here. Her family was from Scotland. So this is all going to play into this really importantly here in a bit. But again, these symbols, sigils, all of this was a rendition from a neighbor that actually had to write an affidavit, and we'll explain why here soon. So this is why, because Joseph Smith was a glass looker and a treasure hunter to the point where he sucked so bad. Like normally this is like jaywalking. Okay, no big deal. But he sucked so much that they literally took him to court. And so it's amazing for me because he has a whole bunch of affidavits that explain exactly what his family was doing, exactly what they were up to.
Boy.
Oh, yeah. Hard for this church to refute at this point. It's a minor thing that he got in trouble for and just had a fee. Also, he was a Mason and got out of it and didn't really get in trouble. But it's important for me because we're going to get into this with the Smith family magical relics. So the occult beginnings of this is wonderful. Also, the church tried to get rid of this. The church did not. When I grew up in the church, this was not a thing. Okay. I'll tell you, let me get to, we'll just zoom in on this stone here. This is a treasure bag. And this stone, the brown stone to the right corner, that is his favorite stone. And it becomes really important. The Mars dagger at the bottom has Adonai on it. It's like a sigil knife, including like, if you know anything about the occult and the magical realm, they have a chalice, they have a knife or a dagger, they have these things. So this is very occult in nature. They will lie and say, this isn't really Joseph's, this is his brother's, because they died together and then the things were divided up that were on them. Okay. However, let me give you a little thing about his brother, Hiram, like Hiram Abiff, not a coincidence at all.
Who names their kid Hiram
Right,
if that's
Hiram.
not what they're, It's like, no, we didn't want to. It's just something
They're not Masons at all. What? Yeah. So they said, oh, no, it's his. And here's the problem with it. Hiram was quiet. He was the studious one. They also say that these people were stupid farm people. No, Hiram went to Dartmouth. It was a college inside of Dartmouth called the Indian College. But like, come on now. These are not just silly little dirt boys. Okay. This is no. So when I grew up in the church, there was nothing about a stone. I'm almost 50, just to put that in there so you guys can understand. Like when I grew up, I'm 48 this year, and they never said anything to us. Okay. No magic hat, no stone, none of that. So this was a shock for me growing up.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, this was the treasure bag. And this is wonderful because guess what? A private owner owns this and he won't release it and he won't get rid of it. So the church can't destroy it. So it's
nice.
And so these sigils are actually what led me to my little conjecture. So those 3 sigils, I'll go back really quick. Were in the bag. There's 3 of them total. Okay. This colorful drawing on the bottom is just like a decoding of one of them. But there were these sigils in this bag with a Mars knife and a seer stone and all this weird stuff. So not weird at all, right? Because he's completely a Christian. Do you feel Christianity coming through at this point?
Yeah, it's really coming through.
Glaringly.
Yes, right? We're feeling the spirit. Not at all. Okay.
Some spirit.
So it gets even better. Some spirits. We'll say we see spirit stuff for sure.
That's right.
This is the decoding of all this. And I'm just going to zoom it in for the bottom part. Like people can look at this later, but where is it coming from, right? The Magus, Francis Barrett. Okay. The Discoveries of Witchcraft by Reginald Scott. Occult Sciences by Ebenezer Sibley. And the last one I cannot read because the little sharing thing is on there. Let's see if I can shut this. Hold on. Maybe. The little sharing tag is right over it. So anyway, the last one's not important. The Magus is the most important and the Occult Sciences with Sibley. So it doesn't matter. This is called the Holiness to the Lord parchment. And you can kind of see on here that Jubla dance right there, that guardian in the middle, that little weird drawing. Yep. So Jubla dance is really important. So just put that also in your back pocket. For later because it's important. So this says Holiness to the Lord on top of it. So does the LDS Temple. If you want to find a picture someday.
Interesting.
Yes, it's right on top of the doors. And so there's
just a coincidence.
Occultic drawings, right? Like you can see all of this here. So we won't go into all of them, but this is the original, what it really looks like if it's not colored in to help people see, because it's really old and it's messed up, and these are the only pictures of it. So again, another photo of it just so that people can kind of see it deciphered, but it's kind of weird still because there's some that are sideways and whatever. So, but people can look at this, on their own. Yeah. see this wheel. Doesn't that look like what they were drawing outside?
Yeah. Yeah, that picture of them drawing on the ground. Yeah, that looks like that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. This is the second one. This is the second parchment. This is called the Jehovah parchment. Remember how I told you to keep in mind Jubilee-dance? This is the Jubilee-dance symbol. These are calling down for specific angels. And when I got out of Mormonism, you know how you said when you become your own person and you start studying things on your own, blah, 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 that part when you first introduced, hugely important for my life. So I got out and I started wondering just what I had done because I was trying to break off demonic strongholds. I did this by accident. I wasn't a podcaster. I wasn't doing it for that reason. I simply was a woman trying to get a lot of weird stuff out of my life. That's it. And that was all I was up to. I wasn't trying to share with anyone. I had no friends to share this with. I live in Utah. Everyone is Mormon. Nobody wants to talk to Heidi about this. So back then, now everybody does, but that's fine. But I did this studying before, and I wondered, well, what is this? So I reversed, took this little clip and I put it into Google, right? Like the image thing. And then I kept going, and I'll get back to that, but just remember that part. I don't know if I should say it now. Maybe I should just say it now. All right. So I put it in, and the only other time Jubilee-dance comes up ever on the whole entire internet was once, and it was John D. And I was like, who's John D? Because I didn't know. I'm just a nurse and a mom. I had no idea who the crap it was. Like, honestly, I wasn't into occult stuff. Like, I'm not supposed to read weird things like that. So I'm like, who is this? So I went, that's my second topic that I really do deep dives on for the most part. It's like Mormonism and John D. Most people that know me know I do those. And that's because I had to learn a whole bunch about him because I was like, why is John D the occultist, weird guy channeling angels, writing things the same as Joseph Smith? The guy I believed in forever, right? Like, this is a little concerning for me
seems a little suspicious. I might want to look into this.
Well, and I'm trying to break off strongholds in my life. So I'm like, oh, is that a demon? You know, like, what's happening? So the more I learned about John D, I don't know. Do you guys know the original like story about Joseph Smith and how he found Mormonism?
I know a little bit about it, but you should probably go through it just for this series if you don't mind.
No, not at all. I planned on it. I just kind of jump in with this part because it's like super interesting and cool. But so Joseph Smith went out into a grove of trees. This is what we're told. By the way, there's 4 accounts of this. They're all different, and they hide
Makes
them.
it super easy. Makes it super easy to understand.
Right. And they hide them all except for one. And that is that he was 14 and he went out, and it says, if you want to learn something, call upon the Lord and pray about it and he'll give you an answer. So that's in the Bible. So he did that. And then he was like, I was overtaken by a spirit, and I woke up after I passed out, and God the Father and the Son were standing in front of me. Okay. Well, that sounds really familiar to somebody else if you know the story of Muhammad. So Muhammad likes to pass out too, and Gabriel comes to him and tells him things too. But all of these go back to the original channeler, who was John D. And John D was channeling all these entities, which it's interesting to me of this. Like I said, I was doing this to get occult things off of me. And then I come to find out, okay, let's see. I mentioned Muhammad. What did he do? He passes out. He tells these things. They don't write them down. They memorize them because they were a non-written people. And they didn't write him down till he died. But after they did, at some point, right, it becomes what? A religion. So channeling angels, writes it down, religion. All right. Crowley goes... and he talks to Awas, and Awas tells him, you know what, you should write this down. And he writes the book of the law, and it becomes what? Thelema, a religion. Joseph Smith channels, he gets told things, and they say, you're going to find these golden plates, and you're going to write all this stuff down, and you're going to, translate these plates, and then it's going to be a religion. So he does that too. Scientology's fun too. Jack Parsons, L. Ron Hubbard, they're out doing some weird stuff, and they write it all down. It becomes a religion. But at the end of all of these things that I've told you guys, there's always a sacrifice. With John D, they had to swap wives. At this point, you pretty much know you're not talking to God anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because God can see everything. So why does he care if he sees you with somebody else? Like he's thinking that's stupid. And so also against
You're not tricking him.
Yeah. No. And he's also not interested. He could watch anybody do it. Like why? He doesn't care. Yeah.
No.
So,
It's ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, he's not going to be like, hey, this would be a really fun idea. Let's switch it up. So at that point, obviously, they knew something wasn't right. Also, John Dee, fun fact, had to raise Edward Kelly's kid for the rest of his life. Just fun fact.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. That was a
Very
cinch.
interesting fun fact, by the way.
Fun fact. And so Joseph Smith and Muhammad, what happens? They put in polygamy into this, right? And so again, sexual sin. L. Ron Hubbard, I don't even want to start about what was happening in the desert about sexual sin because it was a nasty business. Oh yeah, it's all bad. It's not and so obviously again, sexual sin. Crowley, he got kicked out of countries for his sexual sins.
Right.
So like we don't have to make it up.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. So I mean, he thinks there's a whole universe in your butt. So people, you can look about that. I don't go too far into Crowley because Crowley, ultimately, if you think that Crowley is where the occult begins, you're lost. It's John Dee. And before him, there's actually Al Kindi, who was before him. So
this has been going on for thousands of years. There's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. So I became kind of a weird occultic Christian, which isn't normal. That's a weird thing. So then you're like, then you're looked at really weird because people are like, why are you studying this weird crap? Like you are really off the rails, lady. And I'm like, well, yeah, but it all goes into the same thing. And even my mom was like, oh my gosh, don't have that book in your house. Like I agree. I don't buy Crowley's books. Yeah.
Right. I want to touch on that really quick, if you don't mind. And that's just because while we're going through this series, this is the number one thing that I knew was probably going to come up is why are we researching all of this stuff when we're told we shouldn't be dabbling in the occult, we shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. And I think it's a good point of fact to make sure that people realize that we're not actually dabbling in the occult, we're researching about the occult. And those are two separate things.
You're bringing light, like it says in the Bible, right? We're supposed to shed light on those things that are abhorrent. We're not supposed to be a part of it, but we are supposed to expose it. We are. And
Paul says,
not everybody should do it. I mean, I don't think that mentally, if you can't handle this, like obviously this is why we're speaking out so that people can get the like highlights and not have to have their brain full of like, okay, if you read the Book of the Cow, you might be messed up for a minute. Mess me up for a minute. You know, I'm like, okay, no, my mom does never need to know about the Book of the Cow. Like, but I did because I'm studying weird things. So I'm like, oh, got it.
Yeah, and it brings you to conclusions that you need to go through these steps to know that this stuff is wrong. And you can also make the connections. You know, if you didn't know that those sigils or those symbols were connected to the occult, then you couldn't make the connection to what is, as you knew it, Mormonism. Yes. And so now you're going, how are these things compatible? And so that's the trick, right? Is don't look into these other things because you might see some similarities that us that are hiding them from you don't want you to see.
Well, and we're doing it because we are trying to expose, right? We're not like trying to learn how to create magic, or we're not doing treasure spells or whatever they're doing in the occult. It's all about intention. They're right about that. Like the occult practice of intention is true, but it's all about what you're doing. And so even Damien Eccles has like whole channel on occult stuff. And what does he talk about? Intention all day long. So again, if you're going to study, if you are called to study, you will know it sucked because I was like, what? I am not going to study the Book of the Law. This is disgusting. You know, like I don't need to know all the things in here or whatever, but like I did need to know quite a bit of it. And I would have never, ever, ever known about this occult thing and how I'm going to tie this all together for you in a pretty package with John Dee. because nobody has talked about it really except one other guy. And so, and it was years and years ago about Mormonism anyway, you know.
Sure.
And most people just think, oh, Mormons are just weird Christians. No, they're not. No, they're not. And guess what? They don't know it. That's the sad part.
That is the sad part.
Yeah, that's why I'm pissed off. That's why I talk.
Yeah, the average Mormon, you know, that you might know walking down a Utah street, or I grew up, you know, close to a lot of Mormons, and the average Mormon family is not the problem. This is not what we're talking about. And a lot of them that I've met and talked to, they've told me, we think we're Christians, you know, and I'm like, that's great. And I'm glad that you guys are trying to use that as a foundation, but when the things that you're doing, or the things that the church is doing behind closed doors at a level that is beyond you, because we all know that there's these levels that are beyond your everyday church, you know, going and comings from normal Sunday activities and Wednesday night activities and those type of things. There's these other levels, and these are the levels that we're talking about.
And this kept me from Christ. Like, how many Mormons is there out there, or Muslims or other people that maybe would come to Christ if this was shed? And like, I'm not saying this is going to change a really devout Mormon spirit right now, but maybe it would plant the seed like my mother did for me. And the whole reason why I got out is because of my husband and my mom, and them planting seeds and showing me little truths. I would have never got out on my own, not ever. I lost my whole family, except my mom. And I have my husband, but that's our family. Like, I lost all my extended family, all my great uncles, all aunts, everybody, all cousins, everybody. Nobody talks to me. I lost my grandma, who was like integral in my life because I had a really hard life. And she saved me basically from that life. When I was about 12, I was a ward of the courts and had to be given to somebody. So I went with my grandma, and she was extensively into Mormonism, and hence my journey was, you know, magnified there. I was grown up in it, but my parents were Jack Mormons, and that's like the Catholics that go at Easter and Christmas, basically. And they smoked and drank and did the things. But, you know, I had this really weird life. I had this really Mormon grandma, and my grandpa that was married to her was a biker in the one percenters. So it's, and then my dad was in prison. So I had this really crazy life. And by all accounts, like, I don't know if you know what the ACEs score is, but I'm a mental health nurse as well. And the ACEs score is like your trauma measurement from when you're a kid. And there's only 10 questions. It's like, did you see anybody beat each other? You know, were you beaten? Did your parents go to prison? Blah, blah, blah. Well, mine's a 10 out of 10. And
you're like, put me down for 10.
Put me down for 10. And I'm like, that's not a good thing.
No.
to get a perfect score is bad. And as a mental health nurse, I can tell you, like, most people that have even a 5 are really messed up, like horribly so. And I give God all the glory. And so, of course, after I got saved, really, why wouldn't I want to share this? Right. That's the whole point. And so for me, like, I'm laying bare every piece of my life, and also all the things that I messed up on, because, like, obviously I followed a false religion, and I was kind of a dick when I was a Mormon. Yeah.
Well, and humility is the beginning of all of this, right? Humility is the baseline. That's what we have to do. And when you deal with mental health, I'm sure you find that a lot of that is the baseline for getting any help or anything like that is humility, finding your bottom and saying, okay, this is where now I need to start rebuilding. And so that's hopefully somebody will find this podcast and say, I'm trying to rebuild my life. Mormonism was part of my past, but, you know, do I want to be part of my future? And so enlighten us. Do they want to?
No. And I'll show you guys why. And like I said, I mean, so embarrassment aside, I just don't really care. I'm kind of like, I'll lay it all bare if it'll bring one person to Christ. Like, so that's okay with me, you know, and I don't feel bad about my circumstance, because the whole reason why I'm unfiltered is unfiltered. You get it? But rise is rise above. I'm not a victim mentality person. I should be on a corner selling my body somewhere for some drugs. Like, I'm not. And you can do it. I mean, I was married at 17, and I have 6 kids and I still went to school. I still finished everything. I still worked really hard, and you can do hard things. You can. Yep. God will be there for you, And so that's my hope in sharing all this. So, like I said about these parchments, sorry, we got off on a tangent there.
It's all good.
Joseph Smith Sr. and Joseph Smith Jr. Were probably the owners, but they were inherited, as I mentioned, to Hiram's family after their death in 1844. So they were martyred. I don't know if you guys know that. After he had the vision and got the calling from, God, the Father and the Son of another guy coming. And it was I'm not kidding, a white Indian named Moroni, who is exceedingly white and delightsome. Yeah. This is a Mormon phrase. White and delightsome. We're going to get into white and delightsome. So, yes, he was considered a Lamanite. When you hear that, it's because the Book of Mormon had some main characters in it. Nephi was one. He was the good brother. And Laman and Lemuel were kind of the bad brothers. And Laman was cursed with a dark skin because he was bad. And so that's why he was Native American, or as they called them, Indian back in the day. But I'm not saying that. And so this all ties into that because he supposedly hid the plates in a hill, Cumorah, in his backyard. Because, why would you want to travel? Like, if the angel's coming to you, they're definitely in your backyard.
If you're a treasure hunter, you don't want to go very far.
Yeah, no, because he had a bum leg, remember? And so he couldn't walk too far. So he goes there and he gets them. But I do believe he was channeling spirits, but we'll get there. And then he got the plates out of the hill Cumorah and he translated them into the Book of Mormon. That's a very quick and dirty version, but we'll get more into it. Just so you know, like why, how, whatever. That's kind of like the story. So again, we're back to these parchments. The other fun thing is that he owned, which was verified by his wife, Emma, was Jupiter talisman. He wore it always, and she wanted it back when he died. So she verified that it was his because she wanted it. This girl was a ride or die girl. And by the way, she also took a piece of his hair and wore it until the day she died. Not a cult ticket at all.
Yikes.
Oh, what?
Super creepy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love you, honey, but I'm not keeping any of your hair.
No, it's weird.
I ain't got none. So
yeah, we don't have to worry about that.
Hair and teeth, not a good idea to keep. Any of that stuff, it's pretty awkward. So this talisman, Jupiter talisman, is something he owned, and it was among his most intimate possessions. Very few people knew about it, but like I said, Emma said that this was his. The talisman demonstrates Joseph's fascination with magic. The purpose of such a talisman was to help the owner have influence over others, become rich and powerful, and find peace. The inscription on the talisman comes direct from the Magus by Francis Barrett, a magical book. So people say he didn't read the Magus, and he couldn't have possibly had a copy of the Magus, and he couldn't read. Bull crap. Mars knife. This is his ceremonial dagger. This copy is a copy of the real dagger, and it has Adonai, Scorpio, and in the intelligence of Mars on one side and the seal of Mars on the other. When you have a ceremonial dagger, it's for blood sacrifice. So that, there's no way around this. This is a blessing as you slice the throat of whatever you're slicing. You don't have to say the prayer out loud because it's on the knife. Okay. So people that are not familiar with the occult, there you go. But yeah, not normal, not Christian. This is the real picture. And so creepy. Like I said, it's a ceremonial magic thing. I have talked to shout out New York Patriot. He was in the OTO. He verified for me. This is very occult in nature. So
and they're not using this dagger to cut bread for communion or anything like that. Like this is just regular killing machine.
This is gross. Yep, exactly. So also fun fact. So remember the story I told you about the plates? Well, he didn't just give them to him all of a sudden. He was like the angel that had the plates in the little hill Cumorah. He was guarding them. And so he told Joseph, you know what? You're a little bit young. Come back next year and come back next year. He did this to him for a while. Well, eventually the 1 year he said, I'm going to give him to you next year, but here's the deal. You got to bring with you your brother Alvin, because Alvin is the key and he needs to be here. Perfect. Joseph is like, yes, this is great. This is why I think he was channeling spirits, because if you read back about John D and the spirits that were talking to them, they love to screw with people. Yeah. So
like
they would show up. It is. Yes. They would show up and be like, P.S. you stink. P.S. we hate the way humans smell. And you didn't do this or that. And everyone says Edward Kelly was faking it. But here's the thing. He literally was screaming at times because they were stabbing him in the eye with things and like trying to break his arm. And I just don't think you would do that. I don't think you would fake it till that level. And also he tried to run away. He tried to not come back, and they tortured him until he came back. He also never wanted to get married and was super against marriage. And they told him, if you don't go get married, we're going to torture you some more. So he did. And he hated his wife. By the way, she like loved him till he died, which is super shit. That's bad. But anyway.
Yeah.
So he did it. And then he came back. And one of the times they were like, hey, why are you married? What?
Wow.
Like they just love to mess with people. And so same thing about them swapping wives and all kinds of weird stuff. So I say that to preface this because whereas reports have been industry put in circulation that my son Alvin had been removed from the place of his interment and dissected. First of all, his brother died before they could find the angel. Within that year, he was poisoned. Actually, he had constipation, and the doctor accidentally gave him too much of whatever they were using to cure him and killed him. And they say you must know and are peculiarly I can't say that word, calculated to harrow up the mind of a present and deeply wound the feelings of relations. Therefore, for the purpose of ascertaining the truth of such reports, I, with some of my neighbors this morning, repaired to the grave and removing the earth, found the body which had not been disturbed. Okay, basically, I'm going to explain this to you. And this was like a reel in the newspaper, ran for 6 days. This is what this means. In the Palmyra Sentinel, by the way. 1824. This means he went and said, if you saw me dig up my son, I didn't dig up my son because I wanted to dig up my son. I dug up my son because you said I dug up my son. And everybody's put these rumors out that I dug up my son and dissected him, but I didn't. And so I dug him up to show you that I didn't. So I didn't. Cool.
That makes perfect sense.
It seems like the most believable possibility of all of
this is like
choices.
The best pre-gaming ever, right? This is like just in case you saw me digging him up. This is why, right?
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. So remember what I said? They said you have to bring Alvin with you. So the big joke is in Mormonism, Alvin had a hand in helping Mormonism be created because they think they took his hand. If you know anything about Skull and Bones, like this makes perfect sense. So, and it's very creepy. So yeah, occult in nature. Remember this.
Very.
Also, they love seer stones. Joseph's sandy colored seer stone is this one. They just, when I was little, not a thing. No magic hats, no seer stones. I'll get to where we were when I was young. This was not a thing. But eventually the internet came out and they were like, ho, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So they were like, maybe we should do like his dad and pregame it, which is why I put that where it is in this little slide description, because basically the church has done the same thing with everything. When everything started to come out, they were like, ha. Yeah, we know. We have the stone. Look, like the stone didn't exist when I was a kid. This was not a thing. We were not hokey pokey people. No magic, no funny stuff. Now it's funny stuff all day long. And they put it in a museum. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Wow. Okay. We're changing everything. So Joseph Smith likely used his brown cedar stone while translating the Book of Mormon. His wife, Emma Smith, is believed to have made the leather pouch. And funny fact is he got this because he stole it.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, he was digging a well for his neighbors next door, and she had a seer stone and he knew about it. And they've all had the parents had them. Everybody had them back then. But his friend was like, yeah, for sure. And he was like, oh, look at this cool stone. And he's like, yeah, let me see it. Oh, that's mine now. And they were at his house, in his yard, in his property. And the guy was like, no, I want that back now. And he was like, yeah, no, I'm not, no. And so his brother like had to do like a negotiation on this and be like, you need to stop now, like give it back. And he was like, yeah, I'm not giving it back. And so he never did. And
what a guy.
Yeah, this pissed off the neighbor, which is why the neighbor got so involved in all of the affidavits and everything later, because he had already stolen from him. And so
he had some background on him.
Yep, he was irritated. And then this is why they took him to court, basically, was because everybody was irritated at this family at this point, pretty much. So when I was young, this was not a thing. We're going to get to the Urim and Thummim, but this is how it actually was translated. Joseph would put his head in a hat, put his stone in the hat, and block out all the light. Sound very Nostradamus or Edward Kelly to anyone? Like, okay, so we're scrying. So if you have any doubt about the scrying or John Dee's connection, it will tie together for you by the end, I swear. So when I show you the angelic writings, you'll see. So when he did this, he would just call out these symbols, and then he didn't even know what the symbols were. He called them Reformed Egyptian. Well, they weren't. They're Enochian alphabet. And so he didn't know that, though. He thought he could decipher Egyptian, and he thought he was super good at it. And so his little helpers have ranged from, this one is most likely the South Park episode, with Lucy. Smart. And he's dumb. This is who they're talking about. And so also he had his cousin help him, Oliver Cowdery. His wife helped him at one point. Everybody that helped him except his wife to do this on the translation end was eventually excommunicated, just so you know. Fun fact.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Did anybody else look into the hat, or was it just him?
Just him. He was the Edward Kelly.
So nobody else could verify what he was seeing.
No one else could, because here's the thing. His cousin tried that little nonsense and was like, guess what? I had a revelation too, because I have a little stone too. And he's like, no, you aren't special. Knock it off. So yes, he coined that only the prophet, seer, and revelator could do that. So this is a copy of the Enochian alphabet above. Okay. This below is an excerpt of Joseph Smith's calling out to Harris. I can't remember his name right now. Martin Harris. There we go. And he took it to have it verified, because back then they would do that. And he thought it was this cool Egyptian, whatever. And it became known as the Anton problem, basically. And he took it to this guy Anton, and he's like, hey, can you verify this for me, that this is antiquity and all this stuff? And the guy was like, yeah, I'll do it. And he looks at it and he's like, yeah, this actually looks super old and all this, and it looks legit. And then he's like, so how did you get this? And he's like, oh yeah, well, we talked to angels. And they're like, no, I'm not verifying anything. Forget about it. I'm not doing it. And he's like, well, can I have my paper back? And he's like, no, you can't. So
Wow.
So if you look at the bottom and you look at the top, and I can zoom it in or out. I mean,
wow.
Yeah, it looks pretty similar to me.
Yeah, it's just a little bit more combined, a little bit different, but it's real similar. Okay, this is like, okay. I mean, you can study this later, people, but I'm just saying, like, I put it side by side. I made this because people need to see it. And that's how that is.
Totally.
And this is what I was telling you about Joseph when he was 14, and God the Father and the Son appeared to him. Fun fact, also Mormons do not believe in the Trinity. They believe in God the Father is God, and the Son is the Son, and the Holy Spirit is the Holy Spirit. And also, by the way, just so you know, so back to Gnosis, like to Abraxas, they believe that Jesus was made in the words of the church, just like any other man. So Mary had sex. No,
with a spirit.
Yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah, they made a baby. Let me turn
What
this.
you are seeing is an authentic first-time ever on film reenactment of secret Mormon temple ceremonies that even most Mormons have never seen. And those who have sworn never to reveal these secrets under penalty of death.
The execution of the penalty is represented by placing the right thumb under the left ear, drawing the thumb quickly across the throat to the right ear, and dropping the hand to the side.
All of us who've been through the temple have sworn solemn oaths consenting to having our throat slit and our heart and our vitals torn out.
The execution of the penalty is represented by drawing the thumb quickly across the body and dropping the hands to the side.
In the Mormon temple marriage, the partners are sealed to each other for time and all eternity.
Her face.
Like rituals. And without this ceremony,
Yeah.
no one can enter the presence of Joseph Smith and become a god.
Hey, lay, air. Brother Pratt, having authority, I wash you preparatory to receiving your anointings for and in behalf of John Kimball, who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
Sister Bradford, I wash you preparatory to you receiving your anointings for and behalf of
Eliza Barrett,
who is dead, that you may become clean from the blood and sins of this generation.
I wash your head, that your brain and intellect may become clear and active.
Your eyes, that you may see clearly and discern between truth and error.
Thousands of occultic ceremonies each day are performed for the dead, so that they too can receive the benefits of Mormonism. Mormons are encouraged to have encounters with the dead, and it's not uncommon for demons impersonating the dead to appear to Mormons stating that they've been converted to the Mormon church in the spirit world, and now want their family history traced.
Your loins, that you may be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, that you may have joy in your posterity.
Your vitals and bowels, that they may be strong and healthy and perform their proper function.
Your breast, that it may be the receptacle of pure and virtuous principles.
Fun. Super fun.
Yeah.
So let me shut
Masonic.
that and go to the next. So then after you do all that, that was a really quick reenactment of a 2-hour long ceremony. After, and you're naked underneath that poncho. And that
That's
was
quite
fun.
a commitment. Just the 2 hours for me. I'm out.
Oh,
That's
and
too
you have to
long.
do it all the time. That's church is also 2 hours, but it used to be 3. So they got to the point where they were like, nobody wants to do 3 hours. So, because you're like at church all the time. Like
Nobody wants to be a god that much.
they do. Apparently they do. So they not only do church, but they do family home evening is on Mondays, where you have to do a little thing with your kids and teach them all the things. And then if you don't do it, you feel like crap because like there's so much stuff to do and then you just can't ever do it all. But even if you do it, it's fine. And then you still feel like I have so much stuff to do. And then it's women's meeting on one day and men's meeting on one day and the kids meeting on one day and the teenagers meeting on another day. And it's just a chaos. You're just at church all the time. Just forget it.
I remember, and tell me if this is normal or not, but I remember one of my son's friends, he would go every day to the church and
Was it
like,
for seminary?
I don't know, but it was like 2
Yeah, I
hours.
think so.
It was
So
2 hours
seminary
before school every day.
Yes, that's seminary. If it's before school. So I graduated from seminary and I went for 4 years. You have to go. It's very much like catechism. If anybody knows about Catholic studies,
Yep.
that's like catechism and you have to do that. Well, you don't have, you do, but you don't. They started doing it before school because a lot of people in Utah, it's one of your classes and you don't have to go before school because it's Utah. And but for other places or whatever, then they don't have enough credits. So they make it before school, but you learn about, it's just like Jesus school. Yeah. But it's not Jesus. You know what I'm saying? It's Joseph school.
Yeah.
And then after you go through that really Masonic word ceremony and it gets way deeper, that was a very quick reenactment of what they do in the temple and also the preparatory initiatory where they were talking with the ponchos. And first you do initiatory. My great grandma, that's this lady over here. When I went through, I was like, I feel really uncomfortable because I'm naked. I'm super pregnant and this poncho and it doesn't cover anything. And she goes, oh, be lucky. When I went through, we had to get in a tub and get scrubbed naked. I was like, oh, that's cool.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it has evolved. Now they don't even do the poncho thing because you are naked underneath, and they would touch you, but not like sexually, like right here for the breast thing. They kind of showed a rip in the boob, and that's not true. I don't like to sensationalize things. It's weird enough. It really is.
Yeah.
It doesn't need any more weirdness. Yeah.
Yep.
They bless your loins, all that stuff. Well, the first time you go through for yourself. But the next time you go through for dead people. And they did Hitler and Barack Obama's mom and Marilyn and Anne Frank and a bunch of Jewish people that died for what they believe in and made them, Mormons. But that's fine. No, it's not fine. So, and if they lie and say they didn't, I have like the dates that they did Hitler. Like literally, it was December something. I can't remember, but I have it written down. Yeah. So they kept doing this until the Jewish people were like, okay, knock it off. Like you did what are you doing? You did Hitler? Yeah. Like, and then, so it became a thing, and then they kind of talked, and then they were like, stop it. And then they did for a minute, and then they did it again. So if you die and your records are at all public, you probably will end up in a Mormon ceremony at some point in your life. They are obsessed with genealogy, and they take all those names and they put them in their temple files, and then people do them. So they do it by proxy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we're going to get back to Abraxas because of that. And then you get these weird underwear, which I wore forever. It's not comfy. They're not fun.
They don't look great.
Yeah, no. Look at how long the freaking crotch is. Who has a crotch this long? I don't understand why they would make basically the same length for the women as men, because men have a reason why they're long. We don't have to get into why.
Right.
You know why. They have things. Yeah. Like you have to make the room for the things. Well, girls don't have things. And so it made it really nice when it was your time of the month. Great. Because you cannot wear underwear underneath these, and you cannot wear your bra underneath these. These have to be touching your skin.
Oh,
so on the openings is the Masonic square and compass. Can you see the markings? Let's see. Oh, you can see them.
Yeah.
You know what? I was such a dumbass. Let me tell you, I thought these were breast darts, like for sewing. For so long. I had no idea. And then my grandma was like, oh, they're just sacred markings, blah, blah, blah. When I finally was like, well, maybe, so that's the square and compass. And on the belly button is a sideways ruler, and on the knee. And so, and I was like, well, what are they for? And she's just like, oh, they're just there. And then also weird, after they wear out, because these are your underwear, you need 7 pairs of these. I mean, you would think,
hopefully,
7. Yeah. And you change them just like underwear. You can't put them on the floor. You can't wash them with anything else. You have to put them on with your right arm first and your right leg first and blah, blah, blah. It's like a whole thing. And you never take them off except if you're going to the gym, if you're going swimming, or if you're making more Mormons. You get me? So. Yeah, which is a lot because they want you to have a ton of kids. But
and you try to get out of that thing as much as possible, I'm sure.
Oh, and you have to wear, like I said, your bra and everything over it. So if you have big boobs, like your boob slips under. It's like it's a whole thing, and so it's very uncomfortable. They've come a long way though, because it used to be way worse.
Oh my gosh.
They used to be long johns with the butt flap. So it's gotten better, but it makes you wonder what you're invoking into your body with open orifices. Also, the church blesses those, and you can't just get them from anywhere. You have to have your temple recommend, and it's all barcoded, and then you take it and they scan it, and then you can buy them if you're worthy. And if you're not, like say you have some indiscretion or problem, then they make it so you can't buy them, but you might need them because you're not supposed to not wear them. So it's very strange because if you get in trouble and you need new underwear, it's a whole problem. Yeah.
Don't they have a thing where once they wear out, you can't just throw them away?
No, you have to cut all the symbols out and burn them.
Okay, I knew there was something weird.
See, that's weird that you have to cut the symbols out.
Right.
You have to cut them out and burn them. Like they cannot just be out loosed. And then you can use them as rags or whatever after that. They can't show. So if you're a woman, never again will you wear a tank top outside of your home. Ever. Never again will you wear a cutie little sundress. I'm not saying that's everything, but like Most of them are getting these when they're getting married and they're in their young 20s.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bummer. I mean, that's not the point, but you know.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, also, by the way, they're $40 a pair and you can only buy them at the church. So $40 a pair times 7 plus this little cute temple outfit. This
What's
is
the
about
markup on that? $40.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot. And then you have to have it and you have to have this outfit. I mean, the outfit you can rent, but you have to have the underwear. It's like you can't get out of it. I mean, so it's costing you money, and the church owns the full patent on that. And the church has like, they're the only ones that produce them. Like you can't just go buy these anywhere. Like there is no cheaper area. No way. Well, actually, funny thing is you can buy these on eBay, but they're still $50. So yeah. If you want magical,
I mean, that's when you get real desperate.
Get them. Yeah. This was back in the day too. Like when I bought mine, I went through in 1996. So,
wow.
Also I did want to mention the slicing of the throat. They quit doing, before I went. Oh, I know why. I'll tell you why, but I can't prove this. So in 1987, there was a horrific murder. I am actually trying to book with the survivor's husband called the Lafferty murders. And it was a really famous case. And the brothers decided that the wife was bad because she wouldn't do what the other brother, their brother said. And that was her husband. So there's something in the Mormon church called blood atonement, which is why you would slit your throat if you ever divulge the secrets like I'm doing right now, or spill your belly guts out. And the Mormon church says they never had anything to do with it, but they did. And there are quotes from Brigham Young himself stating, "Love your neighbor enough to kill them." You heard me. So, some sins are not able to be atoned for by Jesus Christ's blood, and they feel that you have to atone for them with your own blood. And one of those reasons would be talking like I'm talking right now about all of this stuff. This is their temple ceremony clothing. They wear them over, so you get a white dress and then, or pants and suit thing. And then you have the stuff that's ceremonial is the hat, the veil, the side robe that only covers one breast. Shout out New York Patriot again. Really OTO member-y. But they don't wear clothes underneath. They just let it go. And then the apron is green. It's kind of looks dark right here, but it's fig leaves, just so you know. And then yeah, and then
it's probably not
slippers.
a Masonic,
not Masonic
apron at all.
Doesn't seem Masonic.
Definitely not. And see, they're raising their hand to the square and doing their secret handshakes. So this is one of the signs in the temple. Oh, here's the long john underwears. I need to move that over one. So this is what they used to look like. And then you can still buy a one piece if you want one. I don't know why you would want one, but my grandpa wore them like that. So, and then now they're this way. And if you're in the military or a police officer, you can get black or army green ones. So, just because they understand that, I mean, they're probably not going to be able to cover white, you know. And there again, Masonic symbols. These handshakes. Okay. Most people, this is where Mormons get real pissed. They're already probably mad at me because I showed all the little outfits and underwear. This is even worse, but we only have 3 of the 5 of these handshakes. So the fun thing is that Joseph Smith was a Mason. It's well known now. When I was young, he wasn't a Mason, just so you know. Like that wasn't a thing. And then all of a sudden, now he is. And if you go and look on like YouTube and you put in Mason Mormon, this cute little video will come up from the church. Like, so you've heard Masons are Mormons or Mormons are Masons. So are you curious about it? And they do this dumb little video like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, what is happening? They're just throwing everything out there now, I guess. Like, okay. And they also had some quotes from Kimball, multiple of their presidents, which any president of the church is their prophet, seer, and revelator. He receives actual direct revelation from God and tells us what it is. So, anyway, that's how that works. So this right here, there's only 3 of them. that are ours. And like I said, Joseph was a Mason. 6 weeks later, after he got his Masonic temple ceremony stuff, he created the temple ceremony for the Mormons. And like I said, they say they have the true Masonry now. So this was multiple people have quoted about the true Masonry. So he took this, like, say this one, this is one for us. And you can actually look up Thomas S. Monson and the president do this in front of everyone, which is a no-no. You should never do this symbol unless you're in the temple itself. Okay. But he did in front of everyone. Wow. And so that makes me wonder, what the hell were they talking about, or what were they trying to show there? Like, that's weird, you know? So yeah, this real grip of the Master Mason, or the true grip of the lion's paw, for us is called the true sign of the nail. Because it goes, and instead of having the finger go up, they did it and had it go down onto the wrist where Jesus was crucified. So he just made him like Mormon-y.
You just tweaked him a little bit.
Jesus-y. You made him kind of Jesus-y.
Jesus-ish.
And then these are the signs and penalties again. And then, so while you're going through, you hear this, you sit there after this part I showed you. That was just like the intro. You get your underwear, you do the poncho thing. They tell you you're getting blessed over your loins, all that weird stuff. Now they don't do it naked. They wear a zip up baptism outfit because too many people complained. Oh, I lost my place there. They also don't do the slit throat because the Lafferty brothers, who, by the way, my friends take care of because they work at the prison. And the murder was so bad because they blood atoned her because she didn't want to do what he said about the whole polygamy thing. And they almost cut off her head, and they did almost cut off the baby's head, and they killed them. And then that was in 1987. And in 1990, they got rid of it. I don't think that's a coincidence.
No, too much heat on it.
Yeah, it was under scrutiny. And he still believes to this day that he is Elijah the prophet. And his brother died, the other brother that helped with the murders. But he absolutely feels that God told him to blood atone her, and he doesn't feel bad about it at all. So I am really trying hard right now to get an interview with the surviving brother, which was the husband of in the Lafferty murders. So
that would be incredible.
Crossing my fingers. I am like talking to him. Like, I'm like,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So hopefully he's never done an interview in his life. So I'm like, please, but he's really nervous.
Yeah, sure.
If people want to watch an interesting show about them, and it also has the reenactment of the temple stuff in it, Under the Banner of Heaven on Hulu is John Krakauer's book, Under the Banner of Heaven. It's a true story of the murders. So it's here. We'll have to check that one out. That's a true story, and it's really sad. And Brenda Lafferty didn't deserve that, and her poor husband, like he dropped off the face of the planet after all this happened with his brothers and everything. And then he's still a Mormon, so that's really hard for him. And then his dad was like under all this weird scrutiny because he was really, really serious and disciplinarian. And anyways, his mom finally passed away. So I think that might be why he's opening up now, because I don't think he want to make more problems with his family. I don't have proof of that yet. But Alan Lafferty was completely innocent, not even home or around that day, and that's what he walked into when he came home from work that night. So yeah, that was yucky.
Sad.
So he, like I said, he's just never talked about it. So I do think that's why they got rid of this. And then these others, they do. As you're watching this weird thing about Adam and Eve, you're sitting there in the temple with all this stuff on. And you're like, what the hell are we doing? This is at the point where you're like, oh my gosh. It's like when Scientologists get to the end and they've spent all this money and everything. And then you can't go back. You know, you're like, oh, shit. And then they ask you like, well, anybody that wants to get up and leave can. And you're just like, yeah, right. Your whole family's there. This is supposed to be your best day ever. Usually you're getting married or going on a mission. And so there's no way to get out of it. It's just not. People always say, you seem smart. How would that happen? It's like your life. Like you can't just tell your grandma you're not going to do it because you're not comfy. Although I did tell my grandma, this is really weird. What the hell? And she said, don't worry, you'll get used to it. That was the only thing I got told. No one will tell you about any of this before because it's sacred. Even when you're taking temple preparation classes, which they have you do, they don't go over any of this. And they don't tell you why you're doing any of it. You just do it because everybody's doing it, right? So it's kind of like you feel like an idiot later, but anyway.
Well, it's either you're dumb or the whole rest of your family's dumb,
right?
And that's and that's really hard to believe sometimes. Is that the whole rest of your family has led you down this path, and,
right? And it can't not possibly be wrong, you know?
Right.
Yeah. And at one point, is somebody going to say, "Hey, this is weird"? No, because they're believing in it, you know, and so you're kind of stuck in that way, which is
well. And if you don't do this stuff and you don't go to the temple, then you cannot go to the highest exaltation because there's 3 heavens and you can't go to the top. So, and also he did say that you can't go to the top unless you have 3 wives. So there's that. But
better get back on Tinder,
right? And they take things back all the time. They're like, God told me, I was there and praying and I got a revelation. And I'm like, do you use the stone and the hat or?
Yeah.
Just kidding.
He's like, no, this one's easy. I need to have 3 wives.
Fun fact, Russell M. Nelson is the current president of the church, prophet. And he is an Allen Key member. He is a surgeon, and he is also a Skull and Bones member. So that doesn't sound too Christian.
Yeah, it's hard to make those connections.
Yeah, he was the first one to get the hat out, and he tried it on, and he was like, "Look at me," and I'm like, "No, this didn't exist 5 years ago. I don't know what's happening." But now it does. So it's white, which I thought was weird. I was always like, really? Huh. That's strange.
Yeah.
I didn't envision like
strange.
white, but okay. They say it is. It is. So this is also the part that really flipped me out. This where they in the movie where they were chanting and raising their arms. They used to say Pele El in the movie. They had that because that's an old movie, but like you can't just find reenactments anywhere. Like that's a really weird thing. And it was because Sandra Tanner did that and she's really against the church. So she also left. She's great. So anyway, they took that out and now they say, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth." Well, before that, there was like a big to do about Pele El. And if you look it up on the actual Hebrew translation, people were saying it means false God. And I think that's why they took it out. So all these things they change. Also, but remember, this is supposed to be like your ticket to heaven. And this is what Joseph said we had to do. So I don't know how it can be changed because that's like changing the Bible's most important things. Like this is supposed to be critical to get to heaven. This is it. And so after you do the Adam and Eve thing and you do these chanting, there's a book in the middle of where they're chanting. And when somebody that's Mormon says, "I'll put your name on the temple list." Nope. If you're Christian, just pass on that. Say, "Miss me with that one, sister. Just pray for me regular," because they're going to put your name in a book. And now it's like all computer generated and they print it, but they put it in like a little box and then they chant around it. And this up and down, it's just so bad. And I sat there going, "Oh my gosh, they're chanting." Like at this point, you kind of know, like shit, you know, you're just
made a mistake.
Oh yeah, and you remember you're supposed to be super happy. You have heard about this. There are hymns that say, when you're little, like, I'm going to go to the temple one day, blah, blah, blah. Like, and they give you handkerchiefs and it's pure white. You got to take it with you someday when you go to the temple. And like, they prep you for this from birth. And so you're excited. Like, this is like a big deal. And then you get there and you're like, whoa. Yeah. All right. Nobody told me we were doing chanting.
I think that's called grooming.
Would have been nice to know. Oh yeah, it starts early. And even when you're like 2 and 3 and 4, like little kids will go up. We have fast and testimony meeting. And that means on the 1st of every month they fast and then they have a testimony about it and they go to testimony meeting and that you can bear your testimony. And this is what they say. I'd like to bear my testimony and I know this church is true. And I thank God for my family and for the prophet. And then they usually say his name with his middle name and everything. I don't know why that's important, but it is. Like it's always Thomas S. Monson or Russell M. Nilton. I can't wait. I don't understand.
Very serial killer-esque.
Yes, right? It's strange. And so when you're 4 and you don't understand what testimony means, you're up there saying this stuff, and the parents and everybody are like, you did so good. And I did it to my kids and probably messed them up, you know? Yeah, that's a whole nother box of crap. But so now you don't wear this veil anymore either. And after this whole Adam and Eve thing and the creation story, the devil comes, which is cool, and he comes and give us I don't have a picture here of the apron, and the apron there is the one, the fig leaves one, and my great grandma told me one time, she's like, yeah, they were way better when we were young. And I was like, oh really? And they're totally Masonic, like with the grid floor and the pillars, and it's great. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's crazy. But who gives you the apron and tells you you're naked is Lucifer. And they used to act this stuff out. This is great. Now they don't so much because of COVID. And they called it a live ceremony instead of watching the little temple movie. Now Lucifer would come out and he had a black cape and a black top hat and everything. It was badass. Wow. And he's like, wah ha ha, you know, and like get and you're like, really? I mean, this is why you're just like, holy cow. And so anyway, he's like, you're naked, so you should put this on. And he gives you the apron. And then everybody at the same time, like the temple guy goes, okay, patrons, everyone rise. And now we will put on our aprons. And I'm like, why are we doing what Lucifer said to do? Just curious.
That's not how the story goes. I don't remember it this way.
I'm like, what's happening here? And then you eventually, someday, like after the 2 hours, see this little part back here, you get to the veil of the temple. And you do these secret handshakes through the veil, but it used to be cooler and you'd have to go breast to breast. But like, obviously women were like, I don't want to put my boob on the guy on the other side that's fake God because, you know, it's uncomfy. And so they got rid of that. Now they just have you stick your hand through the cuts, which are actually exactly like the cuts in the garments for, yeah, it's all super Masonic. So then you do that. And then after that happens, your husband goes through first and he got a new name. So if your like name is Dave, you probably got something like Gabriel or some cool thing. And then women get like some Bible name too. And then so the man goes through and tells his name to God because fake God's on the other side. And he says whatever his name is and he calls you through. That's how you know that God's calling you. Right. And these secret handshakes are just to pass the angels and sentinels that guard the veil to get through. So you can't go unless you know all this stuff. And then so when I go through, I don't give my name to God. I give my name to my husband because remember, you can't go to heaven unless you have the priesthood. And women don't ever have the priesthood, but their husband does. So women that used to not get married or women that didn't get married in the temple at all would not go to heaven, and neither would black people.
Wow.
And so, yes.
Which is also very Masonic.
And we get a new name. And I used to think it was super cool that like, oh, I got a new name. It was Abigail and I'm not ever supposed to tell anybody, but there it is because I don't care. And also I think it's a load of crap because here's the thing. If I forget what name it is, because I told my grandma that after, I was like, oh man, I don't know. What if I forget? Like, I'm not supposed to write it down. There's all these rules. Like, she's like, don't worry, you just call the temple. I'm like, well, how will they know my special name from God? And she's like, oh, that's because everybody that went through on that day got the same name.
Great. Oh,
of course they did. Of course they did. Okay, fine. So I didn't know that part. So yeah.
Here's your special name. That's just for you on your special day.
Special. Yes. And this is the other part, how these are the drawings that depict how Joseph actually deciphered all the plates, right? When I was little, remember how I told you when I was young, this was it. Okay. They would show him being very studious, sitting, studying with his little glasses on, because they're called the Urim and Thummim and breastplate of righteousness. Sound very familiar? It's also in the Bible, but it's very Masonic and Jewish Gnostics, like big thing. So just like this, see his breastplate and his little glasses, and they're hooked to the breastplate, but then they hurt his eyes. And so he kind of was like, we're going to use this rock. Oh, look, I got to move that. There's his damn apron. So that is the old one's Satan's apron. There it is. But that was Joseph's.
Wow.
Yes. So Satan wears a dark apron, which he says is a symbol of his powers and priesthoods. Also, he tells you that they're kind of for sale for money, which is really weird. There's a lot of weird stuff. I could go on. We'd be here all day. And I'm already like that. So all-seeing eye, beehives.
$39.95.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You can have one too. I'm sure. I bet you money they sell these. If they don't,
I'm sure.
Fabulous idea. I don't know why you'd want it. Urim and Thummim, here it is. That doesn't look very Christian. What?
Yeah.
All right. So they say, yes. And he says that this is what he would look through and that, whatever. And that this is the breastplate and it would have these certain stones on it. And it's all super like Jewish Gnostic-y. Like it's weird. And here's another picture of that. And there's something also called the Liahona, but we can't get into it today, but just look it up. It's the most ridiculous fun ever. Like I said, I never have to make up anything. And I'm always like, what should I put in there today? Like you guys are actually getting a brand new slideshow, which is why I'm a little discombobulated. Cause I was like, oh, everybody's heard my other one. Like nobody's heard about the Urim and Thummim. You guys are the first. So
nice.
Also
exclusive.
Yes, it is an exclusive. And I never put in this amazing occultic cow baptismal.
Wow.
So this is inside the temple.
About that.
No, definitely not, because oxen and the belly of the beast doesn't scream Marduk at all. Anyway, whatever. So, you know how they used to have the cow that they would burn the people in alive? You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And they were usually innocent people that they sacrificed, like kids.
Yes.
Okay. So when we're young, 12 years old and above, you have to be morally clean. So i.e. virginish, like hopefully. And you've gone through and talked to your bishop about it and everything. You go and you get baptized. This is what it's called. Baptism for the dead. Because that doesn't sound scary at all. And you take all these kids and you're baptizing them for the dead people in proxy. So this is what they did with Hitler and all that stuff I was telling you. But isn't it funny? They make us all wear white. We can't see out and see who's out. There's like these really bright lights. You can't see crap out into the stands. So there are going to be a bunch of pervs out there. Who even knows? You're in all white. You're like pubescent. I asked my husband, I'm like, how did you feel? And he's like, really weird. Cause I was short and little and everyone else was like a full ass man and I wasn't yet. And I was like, man, I felt opposite. Like I was a grown ass woman and I didn't want to go, same type of thing. It was like, nobody wants to be there. And then you're putting these virgin kids in a belly of a beast. You tell me that doesn't represent that. It's very sacrificial. I never put it together until later because I was like reading about occult stuff and sacrifices. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think maybe this is bad. Yeah, like very Baal, right? Or Baal, whatever, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so these are supposed to be representative of the 12 tribes of Israel that are lost, and they're usually gold. This one is different. Usually they're golden calves, which even make it more fun. If you look up about that. So not occultic at all in nature, right? This is a fun one that I've also never spoken about. The Kinderhook plates were discovered in 1843 in an Indian mound near Kinderhook, Illinois. And they were a set of 6 bell-shaped brass pieces with strange engravings. And they were discovered in 1843 near Kinderhook, Illinois. Well, the fun thing is they were like, hey, Joseph, these have got your Reformed Egyptian on them. Can you help us out and tell us what they say? And he made up this whole big story. I'm not going to, because it will take too long. And he tells them, oh yeah, this was some other, guy and this story and that story. Cause remember his was about Nephi. So it's a different thing. And he tells this whole story. And then they were like, oh, that's very interesting. And then some farmer was like, I freaking made those. And they're no, it's real. This is so funny. And they're like, no, you didn't. And Joseph was like, anyways, I got shit to do.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'll be back later.
So
yeah,
great.
he was like, whatever. Probably said that. Also, fun fact. We're going to get into this, but he didn't know no Egyptian. Like, no. We have the Rosetta Stone now, and he was way off. So this is part of President Brigham Young. He was the second president of the church, and this is how fun he is with racism. If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, those with dark skin, the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so.
Okay.
There is, this is loving our neighbor as ourselves. If he needs help, help him. And if he wants salvation and it is necessary to spill the blood on the earth in order that he may be saved, then spill it. Any of you that understand the principles of eternity, if you have sinned a sin requiring the shedding of blood, accept that sin unto death, would not be satisfied nor rest until your blood should be spilled, that you might gain the salvation that you desire. And this is the way to love mankind. Brigham Young, Salt Lake City, February 8th, 1857. Not making it up.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he sounds like a
he's great. He's great.
Yeah,
he had like
parties.
50 something wives. And remember, they said you have to take all these wives to replenish the earth, right? With children.
Mm-hmm.
Guess how many kids he had?
Like 4,
he had
probably.
50 wives.
I don't even.
Not sure.
60.
A lot.
That is not replenishing the earth. That is a hit it and quit it, and you know better. That was a one night stand, and I guess a couple of them were a little lucky to get to, or somebody had twins. I don't even know.
Wow.
He also, like my family, for me, also this hit really deeply at home because my mom is married to a half Spanish, half Native American. My brother married a very dark African-American lady from Chicago area. Her dad was like from Haiti. My niece is half black, obviously. My sister married a half Polynesian, half Chinese guy. Like all my nieces and nephews are mixed. All of my family is mixed. So when I read this really pissed me off.
Yeah.
And you just can't let it go. Right? Like that's he also said that if you were to find your wife in bed with a black man, best to just kill them both right there.
Wow.
He was a super great guy. I call him Bloody Brigham. If you go to my Patreon and you want to sign up, it's $5, which is like less than a coffee. And we do a whole series on only murder, mayhem, Mormons. It has to be Mormon related. And I did a whole big one on Bloody Brigham because he was responsible for some stuff. Also, I think it's very bad when you give people information like that and talk about blood atoning and weirdo stuff because some people are not mentally capable to not understand that's wrong. Like the guy I told you about in prison.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I work in mental health. We don't want to put that out there. Like, what are you doing? Ultimately, you are responsible for the death of a lot of people because you did that. You put that out there and he still thinks like that was right. Bad things. So this is part also with racism. This is actually out of the Book of Mormon, 2 Nephi 5:21. And he had caused the cursing to come upon them, yea, even a sore cursing because of their iniquity. For behold, they had hardened their hearts against him, and they had become like unto flint, so black. Wherefore, as they were white and exceedingly fair and delightsome, that they might not be enticing unto my people, the Lord God did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them. Okay. 2 Nephi 2:15, and their curse was taken from them, and their skin became white like unto the Nephites.
Wow.
Again,
So awful.
yes, another fun one with John Taylor, president of the church as well, another president. After the flood, we are told that the curse that had been pronounced upon Cain was continued through Ham's wife as she married a wife of that seed, as he married a wife of that seed. And why did it pass through the flood? Because it was necessary that the devil should have representation upon the earth. So I can't read the rest right there, but basically they're saying no matter what, even if you have free agency or whatever, like it will still happen. Like evil has to be there, because why would God allow that to happen? He's like, oh, because the devil has to be represented. What? No.
Yeah.
No. These are like fun, stupid facts. Also, I've never presented any of this or the book of Abraham to anyone. I know I'm going long. I'm sorry.
No,
I
you're
hope
good.
it's okay.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The book of Abraham gets into also some fun stuff because it's hilarious. So this parchment, have you heard of it before?
No. I haven't seen this.
I've never presented this ever. I like had this already for you guys because I was like, I'm going to give them something new. So
fringy.
yes, I was like, yes, we'll go extra fringy and weird because
There you go.
you guys are fringy. And so Joseph said he bought these papyri from a traveling salesman, basically, of mummies and parchments. So he decided that this was like some big thing that he was supposed to translate, like the other plates that went so well.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, I know all about this. And this is going to be scripture now. Oh, okay then. And I remember this being in scripture as a kid. Well, when you want to talk about a cult in nature, you want to go to Egyptian because it's great, right? So in the one side, and people can look at this later, it like tells what the real translation is versus like the Egyptian part and versus what Joseph said. And so like all of this is translated how wrong he was, because he didn't plan on the Rosetta Stone. He didn't plan on the internet, like any of this. So he said this was all about Abraham and like the significance of Abraham and Pharaoh and the prince and blah, blah, blah. And actually this is super occultic. This is like, it gets into Horus and weird Osiris and and they put it in the Book of Mormon.
Wow.
And it's still in there and they can't get rid of it because they're like, oh, if we say this isn't true, then he's going to look even worse than he already does. So they just say,
you're in a bit of a predicament.
Yeah. They just say, no, this is what it is. And they're wrong. Okay.
Wow.
And so it makes me giggle because I'm just like, wait, you can't just keep it like that. Now everybody knows the truth and you're just going to like, and whenever they don't want to deal with something, they just are like, that wasn't true. Like, no, like
mind.
Kolob. Like, do you know about
that's what
Kolob?
my kids do.
Yeah. Like they gaslight the shit out of people. So do you know what I'm talking about with Kolob? Oh gosh, it's so fun. Okay. So Kolob is where you can get like, we believe, I say we a lot because I was a Mormon.
No, yeah.
So,
it takes a while.
Yeah. It's, well, and I'm always talking about it. So then people know what I'm talking about. But they believe that there's a premortal existence. So before you're born, you lived with God up in heaven and you picked everything. So if your life sucks shit, you did it. You did it to yourself. And you should just pat yourself on the back because you're really strong. And that's, you know, my life was hard. So this was really also hard for me because they were like, well, you chose your parents and you chose your predicaments and you chose everything. Everything that you're going to go through, you chose. But yet we have free agency somehow. Okay. Great. Good. Okay. So then on top of it, after you die, there's another existence. There's the 3 levels of heaven. But when you go past all of that and you become like God, because remember, God was just like man. And it's kind of very reminiscent of the Emerald Tablets. Now that I know things that are weird.
Yeah.
Very ascended master. Okay. They're like, you can become like God too. You can go forward. And then what you get to do as a woman though, is you get to be eternally pregnant and have spirit babies. But the men get to have tons of wives, and they get to have sex forever and ever, and then they get their own planet. So just like God made this planet and put us here, you can go to another planet and make another planet, and you can populate it and do all this stuff with the spirit babies. And then so Kolob, this is so
Yeah. It's wild.
yes. So you can own your own planet. And so now people are like, that's badass. I want to own a planet. And then people are like, so where's that in the Mormon stuff? And they're like, what? I'm like, Kolob. What happened to Kolob? I learned about it as a kid. It was like in all the stuff. And so was the people being cursed with their skin and all this.
Right.
What? What did you say?
Stop it.
Yeah. No.
Wow.
I've had people ask me like, who ruined the getting your own planet? Because that sounds absolutely cool. And I'm like, I don't know
Yeah.
because they say it never happened. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, that's just, yeah. And so if you look up, if you guys want a backing of what Kolob was and what I'm talking about, look up the King Follett sermon. He talks all about it in there. King Follett sermon, Kolob. So
Okay.
I know I've dumped so much stuff on you guys today.
No, you're good.
Nope,
I'm like,
we have
this
things
is a
to
lot.
look
That's what
up
good
and
about
research.
podcasts.
Yes.
Yeah, you can just push pause and
Good.
go
Yeah,
look this
true.
stuff up.
True. I'm
You
like
guys can
nailing you guys
screenshot.
right now. I'm like, I'm
Love it.
sorry. And so then this was also in there, like I said, about the book of Abraham and his translation versus what it really means. And, you know, this picture, I remember this vividly because I was bored always. And I'm like, this is badass picture. Like, he's got a knife. He's going to kill him, you know? And so I always thought, oh man, that's crazy, you know? And so here we are. We're talking about friggin' Osiris and Horus and reincarnation. And it all sounds super Christian, doesn't it? Like this.
Totally.
Yeah. He also bought some mummies. So I think that's badass. And
wow.
he's just like, I don't understand. If he wasn't martyred, this all would have went away because this is bananas.
Right.
This is literally insane. Like I've dumped enough on you guys today for you to go, why would anybody do this? Like what?
Right.
What are you guys talking about? And but this happens and people know this part. It's not like the weird occultic ceremonies and you're already drug in. Like this stuff is all out there. And same with the racism. Yeah. It's out there. By the way, the racist stuff didn't end until 1978.
Oh,
I was already born. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and now they're playing catch up and trying to hide and trying to figure out how to get rid of the persona.
They said the gay stuff last couple of years, and now they're in trouble.
Yeah, they're trying to remove this persona away from this guy, right?
Yes.
Because this guy is causing them a lot of problems, and then you have this other guy that comes in. You're like, okay, that guy's causing a lot of problems, and how do you get rid of?
You're like, there's
this
so many
stain?
problems. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like at what point do you say, and we say this a lot on the podcast, at what point do you say something's wrong here?
Right.
You know, like something's fishy here, and we need to
Something stinks. Yep.
Yeah, instead of just placating our family and continuing to do this, like let's break these generational things and say, I'm not playing this game anymore.
Right.
You know,
because
and I think
they're good people. They're good people.
Yeah. Right.
I mean,
that's the sad part.
The sad part is if you were to go talk about all this stuff, not this part, because most Mormons know this part, and they're just like, well, they got it wrong. Like, okay, the Egyptian scholars that know things got it. Okay, I got it. Joseph Smith was right, and everybody else was wrong. Cool. And so, you know, I get that part. Yeah, maybe that. But like all the rest of it at this point, like I'm sure would have most people running for the hills just a little bit. We haven't even been talking that long, like in the scope of life.
Right,
okay.
Right.
Sure.
But they do. And like all these Mormons that people know, they're just like, well, they're really good people. And the bad part is this is how they sneak it in and keep it. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And there's many things I cannot go into today because we will be here all day. But the second anointing is something that is huge in the temple that I didn't mention. The second anointing, there is the president of the church, the prophet, and then he has two counselors, always Trinity. Then there is the quorum of the 70 apostles. And these apostles are big. And anybody that makes it to that level has likely gotten the second anointing. And the second anointing is like the Catholics where they sold like tickets to heaven. Do you remember this? Back in the day. And it was like for money, you could just buy your way in. And basically that's what it is. And after you get the second anointing, you can do nothing wrong. Like you could molest people, you could kill people, anything you do, you're still going to heaven. Well, funny enough, that's usually held now for the people that pay a lot of tithing. Because this church is one of the wealthiest churches in the world. And that's because they teach us as little dumb Mormons. It's like you're swimming and you have a baby and you're trying to swim, and you have another baby and you're trying to swim and not let them drown. And then they hand you 4 more babies, right? And you're like, holy cow, I can't do this. But it makes you really resilient because they're like, yes, you can. And you will, because you have to, because if you don't, you're not going to go to heaven. You're going to go to hell, and you're just going to be doomed forever and ever. And your family's going to hate you and everything. So you learn to juggle really good. And I think it made people pretty successful in the Mormon church. Maybe not all, but like the high up people, they pay a ton of money in tithing. It's 10%. You can't go to the temple and do all the weird occult stuff without it. So you have to do that. And you cannot, they ask you a lot of questions like, are you morally clean? Like not having sex without marriage, or like you can't be cheating and stuff. So they say. My first husband definitely cheated. I don't think he answered that question correctly, but whatever. It could have just been him. Do I think that problems occur? Sure, I do. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But like I said, long story short, they have like all these questions, and then you can get your temple recommend. So you have to be a tithing payer, and you can't just go in there and do whatever you want in the bowl. That's not a thing. You have to have exactly 10% of your income. And when I say that, I mean about this time of year, it's tithing settlement time. And what that is after you get your W-2s, you take your W-2s to your bishop, and every single person in the whole ward, which is like your congregation, takes theirs in too. And he looks at it and he's like, you're short. So you need to make that up now. And if you didn't pay on your gross, you're also in trouble. That's not a thing.
Wow.
And so all of these Mormons are doing this all of the time so that they can go to heaven. Because if you don't have that, you can't go to the temple. Then you can't go to the celestial kingdom. You're not going to go to heaven. So it's all a big thing. And these top people that are in the quorum of the 70 and all this other that I'm telling you are usually pretty wealthy. And if they aren't wealthy when they get there, they're wealthy when after the fact, because they write books and they do speeches and blah, blah, blah. They sell their own. Deseret Book is a place where you buy just strictly Mormon, like propaganda-y stuff. And so if they do like Uchtdorf, okay, he was a big one. He's kind of in trouble now, but whatever. He's one of the 70. And they are like, oh, go listen to his speech about blah, 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 you know, whatever. And then he writes a book. And that's how it actually ended up that we found out about Russell M. Nelson being in the Skull and Bones and stuff, because he wrote a biography, because he was in the quorum and then he became the president prophet of the church. Well, they couldn't. It was already done. He already wrote the dumb book. So now if you want to buy the book, it's $1,200 to buy his biography.
Oh my gosh.
We'll start
They
saving.
made sure. But, you know, they're not so smart because people scan it. I mean, come on. I'm like,
we'll get around it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, they do. And it's kind of funny. But here's some more fun with the Book of Abraham. Like I said, I mean, it's all completely wrong. And look, Kolob. Kolob, the residence of God. Stands next to Kolob. I mean, it talks about it. So whatever.
Yeah, it must exist. It's right there.
It totally does. And to them, I mean, do I think it does? No, I do not. But how do I make that go away? Oh, there we go. And then we're almost there. This is from a really old book. Actually, it's this book right. Where'd it go? It is called Mormons and Masons, and I think I might have it in my bag upstairs. But anyway, it's an old book that I found because all these books get tossed out because like somebody in the family bought it and then it was like important then. But then they're like, ooh, that's anti-Mormon propaganda now. Got to get rid of that. So your great grandma or whoever kept the book donates these, and then they end up in these great bookstores in Utah, which I love. And like, awesome. I will buy that book. Yes, I will. Yeah, it's got to be.
That's funny.
And so, anyway, long story short, this is the layout of the Salt Lake City Temple, and underneath of it, what each one represents astrologically, even though they say they don't do anything with astrology and you should never do it.
Sure.
Wow.
The sun and moon phases, cloud stones, sunstones. I hope I kept that in here. Oh, I did. So currently the Salt Lake Temple, which is this one, pentagrams, sunstones, cloud stones, moonstones, the Big Dipper, Moroni. I mean, there's no symbolism to see here, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
They are covering this. Currently, they are redoing the temple for the umpteenth time, and they are covering this up. So I've been told. So
there's too many eyes on it now.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what's up.
You gotta scramble.
Like, okay.
Well, you got all those guys at the top that are making all this money, and now that money is coming into question. And why do we have this much money going to the church and everything like that if you are actually a cult? And so now you got to continue to help your people that are tithing, your quote unquote believers. You have to keep them appeased.
Yes.
And this type of stuff is not okay. So you got to get rid of it as fast as possible.
And the fact is too, even if you get rid of it, like look at the windows, they're hilarious. Like vagina, penis, penis. Like it goes so much deeper. And that's stuff that I don't really say too much because can we prove it? No. But like, can you see it? You know what I'm saying?
Right, exactly.
Like whatever. There used to be straight
That's what
up
we always
a
encourage
pentagram.
people is it's just look, don't dismiss it. Like look at it. Do you see what we're seeing? And it's not that we're making stuff up. It's like this fits within the scope of everything that they're doing. I mean, these guys were spiritual prophets as they said, but they also were perverts.
Yeah, right.
As you said. I mean, it's very obvious in everything that they're doing. They're creating some sort of a sexual idolatry in a way to where the sex is the thing that's being worshipped most importantly.
And if you get into fundamentalism, which is I could come back and do fundamentalism, but they use women as basically, and children as currency. So when I told you about my brother-in-law, when he got in trouble, he was down building. So my brother-in-law is Warren Jeff's nephew. So also Rulon Jeffs, we have to do it this way because they're all like intertangled and related. But he married Rulon, who is Warren's father's granddaughter too. So like a double. Okay. So he was high up, and in his writings, he had written down, Steed is a big popular name for fundamentalists. And he had wrote down that he was likely going to be the next prophet of the church. So they were really close and everything. And he just kind of mentioned to him like, why are the girls 12? Like, we've never done this before. Like, he's like, back in the day when the dad was in charge, Rulon, who had passed away, he said, honestly, Heidi, I loved my life. I liked it that way. It was okay. I understood about polygamy to get me to heaven, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was fully in. Okay. He's like, I didn't feel bad about it at all because we were all over 18. So what? He's like, but it was still awkward because like we grew up, there's no dating, there's no love. Basically how he got married was they called him that day and they said, Isaac, do you want to get married? God has told me that you are supposed to marry my granddaughter, and do you want to? And he said, can I pray about it? And they said, sure, but you're getting married at 7 p.m. today. And so And he was like,
he
was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to kiss a girl. Like he was fully freaking out. And his name, Isaac's Story on Amazon. I like to promote his book because very few fundamentalists will ever come out and speak about this, even if they get kicked out because they're afraid to go to hell. And so he did. And he wrote the book, and I fully support him. And I always am telling people, go buy it. It's not that much. And read it.
What's it called again?
Isaac's Story. I can send you a link too. He's great. And he looks like, if you, I could send a picture or whatever, but he looks like Warren Jeffs, but blonde. He's super tall and stuff. And it's just, I mean, it's weird. But he did mention to him, like, I don't know, like about these changes. Like he didn't even say the girl. Like he's like the changes, which are the only changes had been that.
Right.
And he's like, I was super happy in my life. And my dad had 3 wives growing up, and we had over 30 kids. And then at some point he had 13 wives. And so getting out, when he got out, they took his wife. So when he got in trouble, they said, you need to go report back to Hilldale, which is really close to us. It's like in southern Utah. And then when he got there and drove there after working all day in Texas, like in the heat, everything, because he's like, you don't own anything, Heidi. He's like, even the phone I had wasn't my phone. He's like, the truck I was driving wasn't my truck. Like nothing is yours. And then he's like, the stuff that is yours is like yours because you live on the grounds, but like they own the ground, but you can build your house there, but you don't own the property. So if they want to kick your ass out, they can. And they did. He got home and his wife was gone. His kids were gone. Everything was wiped out. And they were like, you need to leave. And you need to go. They told him he wanted to still get back because he didn't know where his families were. And he's like, you need to go get a job. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to put all the money to us. You need to give every penny of it to the cause. So they made him do all that. And then they still didn't give his wife and kids back. And then so somebody finally called him, and it had been like a long time. They kicked him out and everything. They kicked out his whole family. They reassign your wives and your kids. And they were like, hey, we saw your kids on TV. And then he was like, what? And they're like, yeah, they raided the Texas compound. You can look this up. And they took his wife and kids away and then like gave them to other people, but they were down there. And so he was like, well, I'm going to go down there then if CPS has my kids. And they wouldn't give his kids back because they had wrote in the journals that he was likely going to be the next prophet. And he's like, I've been out, like I'm out. And they're like, tough shit. And so he hadn't seen him at this point. I think it had been 4 years. And then he finally got to see them for just a minute at the CPS. And they gave him like 40 minutes with his kids. And he's like, even though I was so upset because they wouldn't give my kids back, like seeing my kids, like I was just so happy to see my kids. And he's like, I got to see him for a minute. And then they gave him back to their mom. And I didn't see him again for a long time. And then he finally got custody. But they tell the kids, when you go and have this, if they take you away to get back to us, do anything you can do bad. So like the girl was like really the worst because they like to keep the girls. And he's like, so she was like throwing away my sister's cell phone and like all this weird stuff and like making all kinds of problems and just like really bad stuff in their household to the point where my sister was like, I can't deal with this. And they still also look like Little House on the Prairie. Like they're really odd looking. So yeah. And they don't also believe that we are worth anything like the other people in the world. So like, they'll be mean to you because they don't give a crap because you're going to hell. It's kind of like the Goyim, you know, like, and they also will do some bad things that way. So anyway, he lost him again. And then he never got the girl back. She went back into polygamy and he finally got his sons back in their 20s. And that was it.
Oh, wow.
What a rough time.
And
man,
so
that's terrible.
It's not an uncommon story.
Yeah.
And very few people speak out and they have a lot of control. And Warren Jeffs is still running the fundamentalist sect from prison. It's just like the mob, you know, like they don't stop. I mean, and he told people they couldn't have sex anymore or have dogs or have toys for the kids. I mean, he has all these weird rules because if he can't have a life, neither can they. And then he tells people who they can have sex with to procreate and have babies. It's like that show on Hulu, the women that get pregnant. I can't remember right now.
Oh, yeah, The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Yes, that.
Handmaid's
Yeah.
Tale.
And so it's like that now. Basically, only the people that do everything he says can have sex. So,
Wow.
Man.
and it could be somebody else's wife. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Well, Heidi, we're so grateful for you coming on. I know that there's so much more to go over, and we'd love to have you on again if you're up for it.
For sure.
Because this has just been such a great conversation, and knowing that you know, if anybody's on the fence about Mormonism, hopefully at this point they'll know, like, we're not trying to say this stuff to hurt people's feelings or to break people down. We're talking about the systems that were set up at the very beginning and how those systems have come through time. And those are the problems, right?
Yes.
The way that these systems work is the problem. And God would never do that to us. He would never ask young girls to be in these relationships. He would never ask people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And to go through these different ceremonies and things like that. I mean, these are very occult practices. And hopefully if people haven't gotten into the occult, at least you'll know now that Heidi has looked into this stuff and she's made these connections, and God's put her in this place for a reason. In my opinion, we know that God can use us to do these things. And when you're scared, the fear is the problem, right? The fear is the thing that keeps us from speaking out, that keeps us from saving these people from these institutions, these ways of, because we're too afraid of what's going to happen to us. And that's not what Jesus calls us to do. He doesn't ask us to be concerned about ourselves. He asks us to be concerned about the widows and the orphans and those that are, you know, having a hard time in the world. And I would say that those that are stuck in fundamentalism, Mormonism, or even in Mormonism as a whole, these are the people that we should be talking to and reaching out to and saying, listen, there's more to life than this. There's so much more to life. So thanks again, Heidi. It's been so awesome talking to you.
Yeah,
and,
thank you. Jesus is
best of luck.
Not a
Heidi's
religion.
podcast.
Jesus is just you and the Bible. And that's all.
Yes.
Yep.
Figure out that and you'll feel way better, I promise. Because it was heavy.
right.
Yes. And my podcast is Unfiltered Rise. I'm pretty much anywhere podcasts are served. I do have the extra one on Patreon because I try not to cut my episodes and do it that way instead. Like to give extras. And so
and you have YouTube that people can go watch some of this stuff too.
Yes. And so that way I feel like, because this is really God's word, like this is not, I would have never chose this for my life. Like this is uncomfortable and I still live in Utah. Sure. All my family's still in, like, but at the end of the day, like at some point in your life, like if you get challenged with something, it could not be Mormonism. It could be something else, but right is right and wrong is wrong.
Yes.
And you have to find out where you're going to draw a line, because if not, each one of us could be at risk with the coming of the end times and the brown shirts, like in Nazi Germany, and look that up, like different things. Yeah. Like you don't want to be one that just stands by the side because it didn't affect you that day. Right.
Yeah.
You just need to find some things out. And people say, oh, it's not a cult because it's mainstream religion. Bet. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect place to end. And I think you hit it on the head. We have to do our own research. We have to look into this stuff, and we have to just have open minds. Yes. And I promise you, if you guys have an open mind and you look into this stuff, you'll find the truth, because God wants you to find the truth. And so with that, we're going to let you go, Heidi. Thank you so much again for coming on. This has been such a great conversation, and we're going to get out of here for now. No, it's perfect.
Yeah, thank you again for having me.
Yes.
Oh, of course. So great to have you. And for all of you that are listening,
thank you.
For all of you that are listening, we've got so much more coming up with all of these other heavy religion talks and things like that. It's very important, and I hope you guys are excited about it as much as we are. So with that, we're going to get out of here. We are That's So Fringy Podcast, and we will see you guys on the next one. Bye guys.
Bye.